Imagine that the Earth has become one big, giant, lifeless desert. There are no trees, grass, plants, birds, animals, or anything like that on it. And here and there wander strange creatures, almost like chimeras. Only after careful study do you realize that these are people. They wear head-to-toe one-piece coveralls, sunglasses, high boots, long gloves, and hats, so as not to leave even a tiny patch of skin showing. It is thus that the inhabitants of the Earth have to defend themselves from the sun, which has become, for all life, public enemy number one. The light from our sun no longer warms us softly and affectionately. Now its rays hammer down, destroying everything they touch. This is not some scene from a sci-fi thriller. This, according to scientists, will be our life on Earth if we are somehow deprived of our ozone layer. Let's see how realistic this situation is and whether it can be avoided. To begin with, it's worth first discussing what exactly the ozone layer really is. Ozone is a gas of a blue color consisting of triatomic oxygen molecules. Its name translates from the Greek meaning to smell. You might recognize this unique fragrance of freshness that the gas possesses. It's that particular bouquet that often appears just after a thunderstorm. The ozone layer, which we often hear about, is a layer of the gas that covers our planet at an altitude of between 20 and 50 kilometers. It absorbs most of the ultraviolet rays of the sun, serving as a steadfast and reliable shield against this harmful radiation. This layer arose in the atmosphere 600 million years ago, and thanks to the ozone layer, life was able to move out of the ocean and onto the land. Nature forged this shield with a very thin dispersal of the gas. If we collected all of the ozone from our atmosphere and compacted and concentrated it at the Earth's surface, we would have a thin film with a thickness of only 3 millimeters. So what would happen if the shield became thinner, or if it even disappeared completely? The main danger that this thinning poses is the loss of protection from ultraviolet radiation. This is one of the main causes of skin cancer. Scientists have calculated that the disappearance of even just 1% of the ozone in the atmosphere will lead to an increase in the disease by 2 to 3%. And the probability of getting a more severe form of the disease, which more often results in a fatal outcome, will become much more common. Additionally, those who are descended from the more northerly dwelling tribes of our planet will be the first to suffer. The degree of harmful effects depends not only on the level of irradiation, but also on particular characteristics of the human body and skin type. Thus, people with light skin, who are freckled, with blonde or red hair and blue, gray, or green eyes, are the most vulnerable to the harmful effects of these rays. Their bodies produce less melanin, the coloring which protects us against UV radiation. In addition, an excess of ultraviolet radiation leads to a malfunction in the immune system, which can trigger other oncological pathologies. The number of infectious diseases like malaria, for example, will also grow. And many inhabitants of the planet will never get a chance to see this devastation. Exposure to UV rays will result in an unprecedented outbreak of eye diseases, most especially cataracts, leading to blindness. And it's not only people who will suffer without our ozone umbrella of protection. It's also been established that under the strong influence of ultraviolet radiation, plants change shape, and they may even lose the ability to photosynthesize, leading many to die. And UV rays are extremely harmful to small fry, shrimps, crab, and algae. But most critically, these rays will ravage the Earth's plankton, which plays a vital role in the global food chain, as well as in the conversion of carbon dioxide into oxygen. Suffering from the powerful effects of this radiation exposure, most of these organisms will die, which will disrupt the entire world's ecosystem. In addition, the thinning of the ozone layer could lead to climate catastrophe. The ozone layer reflects back down about 20% of the Earth's radiation, keeping heat from escaping into space. As the ozone layer disappears from the atmosphere, our air temperature will decrease, causing the direction of the prevailing winds and the weather to change. The result will be worldwide drought, massive crop failure, food shortages, and famine. These cataclysms could have already hit the world by now, as just a few decades ago there were giant holes in the ozone layer. Fortunately, Scientists spotted them in time and sounded the alarm. The first realization came in 1985. Researchers from Britain discovered a huge gap in the ozone layer over Antarctica. Then, over the Arctic, numerous mini-holes were recorded over an area of roughly 2 million square kilometers. Scientists set out to discover just exactly why the ozone layer of the Earth had suddenly become so leaky. First, they suggested that nature was to blame. It's known that ozone can be destroyed as a result of volcanic eruptions. But then they realized that, at that point in time, the planet's volcanic eruptions just weren't powerful enough to punch such giant holes in the ozone layer. Further research revealed that human activity was at fault. They realized that the ozone layer is negatively affected by nitrogen fertilizers, which are widely used in agriculture. To add fuel to the fire, atomic explosions also damage our ozone shield. Researchers argued that an exchange of nuclear strikes with a capacity of only 1.5 megatons would lead to a complete destruction of the ozone layer and a threefold increase in the incidence of cancer. Our protective ozone cover is also mercilessly torn at by jet planes and spacecraft launches. The substances that make up jet exhaust quickly destroy ozone. And it's estimated that just one launch of the space shuttle distributes more than 100 tons of chlorine and other compounds into the atmosphere. This exhaust tail is capable of destroying over 10 million tons of ozone. If one were to launch, one after the other, a series of just 300 such spacecraft, the ozone layer would be torn into numerous small pieces. And yet, none of these were the main cause of the disaster. In 1974, scientists at the University of California had already discovered that the ozone layer was mainly damaged by chlorofluorocarbons, also known as freons, which are used in almost every different kind of refrigerator and air conditioner. For such a critical discovery, the scientists were awarded the Nobel Prize. In order to repair the holes in the ozone layer and prevent the formation of new ones, in 1987, the International Montreal Agreement was adopted. It provides for a progressive ban on the use of substances that deplete the ozone layer. Full and complete prescription of freons was planned to be implemented by 2010. Of course, we cannot live without our refrigerators, air conditioners, cleaners, deodorants, aerosols, and all the other modern necessities that use freon. But for the filling of aerosols, an alternative had already been found in the form of a propane-butane mixture. And in cooling plants, we now use ammonia. As a result, thanks to the Montreal Protocol, the hole in the ozone layer has been significantly reduced, with the added benefit of slashing the incidence of skin cancer by 10 to 15%. If there had been no agreement, by 2013 the gap over the Antarctic could have increased by another 40%, and the ozone layer would have become much thinner over all the other parts of the globe. But it's still too early to celebrate victory. According to recent data, the process of recovery has begun to slow down, and researchers have been desperately searching for the cause. Studying satellite images and data from weather stations, scientists have drawn attention to the fact that the air of Antarctica contains an unusually large amount of dichloromethane. This is one of the most popular reagents used in the food and chemical industries. In recent years, its concentration in the atmosphere has doubled. However, so far, little is known about where exactly it's escaping from and just why its emissions have grown so rapidly. Previously, the substance was barely even paid attention to, as its molecules decay quite quickly in the atmosphere, mainly under the influence of sunlight. For this reason, dichloromethane was not prohibited by the Montreal Protocol. And in May 2018, scientists recorded a sharp increase in emissions of another harmful substance, CFC-11, banned by the agreement in Montreal. It turns out that CFC-11 has continued to be used illegally by many small factories in China. To save money, the factory owners buy this environmentally hazardous substance as it's much cheaper than less harmful analogs. So, the restoration of the ozone layer will have to continue. Recently, there was a proposal to replenish the ozone layer artificially. To do this, according to the authors of this project, it would be necessary to produce ozone artificially and then, at an altitude of between 12 and 30 kilometers, use aircraft to spray it into the atmosphere. However, such work would be staggeringly expensive. So adding a significant amount of ozone to the ozone layer at this time, even with all of our modern technology, is, alas, impossible. Obviously, it's best that we throw all of our might into the fight against these sources of ozone depletion. And to do this, first of all, it'll be necessary to seal the hole in the Montreal Agreement itself by banning the use of dichloromethane and any other compounds harmful to ozone. We'll also have to think about replacing chemical fertilizers with organic ones and developing jet engines that are safe for the atmosphere. And speed is of the essence here, as otherwise the progress we've already achieved could be wiped out in the blink of an eye. But even with the most favorable development of events, according to researchers' calculations, the complete restoration of the ozone layer will still take several more decades and will require a great deal of our drive, time, and money. But then our descendants will not have to hide every centimeter of their skin from the evil ultraviolet rays of a violent, cancer-inducing sun. Under the protection of our ozone layer, they'll be able to calmly engage in the everyday, ordinary affairs that make us all happy, falling in love, raising children, advancing knowledge, and reaping golden harvests.